Hello everybody, I'm Miss Jessica from EVPL Oakland, and today we're going to be continuing our chapter book story time where we read just a little bit of a story so that you can decide if you would like to keep reading it. So we're previewing it for you. Now, the last time we were together, we did our Plinko board and we landed on humor, and I always love a story that is going to make me laugh. Now, this particular author, I've actually read several of his books as an adult because he does write for adults. I've also read several of his chapter books, and they always make me laugh out loud. So I really hope this is a good one for us today. So we are going to be reading 𝐀𝐽𝐝 by Carl Hiaasen, and he always cracks me up, and even the cover of the book, I mean, that's amazing. That huge alligator or crocodile, I'm not quite sure what it is yet because we haven't started reading the story yet. Okay, so let's see what the inside cover says. Wahoo Cray's life is a zoo, literally. His father, Mickey, is a professional animal wrangler, so Wahoo's backyard is crawling with gators, snakes, raccoons, monkeys, and turtles. The critters he can handle. His dad is the unpredictable one. When Mickey Cray takes a job with a reality TV show called Expedition Survival, Wahoo knows he'll be doing some wrangling himself to keep his father from strangling Derek Badger, the show's outrageously inept and egotistical star. The job gets off to a harrowing start when Derek stages a near disastrous scene with Alice, the Cray's gigantic gator. Things get even hairier after Derek, who foolishly believes his own PR, insists on using only wild animals in his stunts. Meanwhile, Wahoo has acquired a shadow named Tuna, a girl who's sporting a shiner courtesy of her father and needs a place to hide out. Wahoo doesn't know what else to do but to bring her along on their Everglades adventure. The TV crew is on location for barely a day before Derek gets chomped by a bat and goes missing in a storm. Then, as search parties gather at the edge of the swamp, Tuna's dad shows up waving a gun. Will anyone survive Expedition Survival? Okay, so there sounds like there's going to be so much happening in this story. So let's see what's going to happen. All right, so chapter 1. Mickey Cray had been out of work ever since a dead iguana fell from a palm tree and hit him on the head. The iguana, which had died during a hard freeze, was stiff as a board and weighed 7.5 pounds. Mickey's son had measured the lifeless lizard on a fishing scale, then packed it on ice with the turtle veggies in the cooler behind the garage. This was after the ambulance had hauled Mickey off to the hospital where the doctors had said he had a serious concussion and ordered him to take it easy. And to everyone's surprise, Mickey did take it easy. That's because the injury left him with double vision and terrible headaches. He lost his appetite and dropped 19 pounds and lay around on the couch all day watching nature programs on television. "I'll never be the same," he told his son. "Knock it off, Pop," said Wahoo, Mickey's boy. Mickey had named him after Wahoo McDaniel, a professional wrestler who had once played linebacker for the Dolphins. Mickey's son often wished he'd been called Mickey Jr. or Joe or even Rupert, anything but Wahoo, which was also a species of saltwater fish. It was a name that was hard to live up to. People naturally expected somebody called Wahoo to act loud and crazy, but that wasn't Wahoo's style. Apparently, nothing could be done about the name until he was all grown up, at which point he intended to go to the Cutler Ridge courthouse and tell a judge he wanted to be called something normal. "Pop, you're gonna be okay," Wahoo could tell his father every morning. "Just hang in there." Looking up with hound dog eyes from the couch, Mickey Cray would say, "Whatever happens, I'm glad we ate that bleepin' lizard." On the day his dad had come home from the hospital, Wahoo had defrosted the dead iguana and made a peppercorn stew, which his mom had wisely refused to touch. Mickey had insisted on eating the critter that had dented his skull and would be spiritual, and that had dented his skull would be a spiritual remedy. Big medicine, he predicted. But the iguana had tasted awful, and Mickey Cray's headaches only got worse. Wahoo's mother was so concerned that she wanted Mickey to see a brain specialist in Miami, but Mickey refused to go. Meanwhile, people kept calling up with new jobs, and Wahoo was forced to send them to other wranglers. His father was in no condition to work. After school, Wahoo would feed the animals and clean out the pens and cages. The backyard was literally a zoo. Gators, snakes, parrots, birds, rats, mice, monkeys, raccoons, tortoises, and even a bald eagle, which Mickey had raised from a fledgling after its mother was killed. Treat them like royalty, Mickey would instruct Wahoo, because the animals were quite valuable. Without them, Mickey would be unemployed. It disturbed Wahoo to see his father so ill, because Mickey was the toughest guy he'd ever known. One morning, with summer approaching, Wahoo's mother took him aside and told him that the family savings account was almost drained. "I'm going to China," she said. Wahoo nodded like it was no big deal. "For 2 months," she said. "That's a long time," said Wahoo. "Sorry, big guy, but we really need the money." Wahoo's mother taught Mandarin Chinese, an extremely difficult language. Big American companies that had offices in China would hire Mrs. Cray to tutor their top executives, but usually these companies flew their employees to South Florida for Mrs. Cray's lessons. "This time they want me to go to Shanghai," she explained to her son. "They have like 50 people over there who learned Mandarin from some cheap audio tape. The other day, one of the big shots was trying to say 'nice shoes,' and he accidentally told a government minister that his face looked like a butt wart. Not good." "Did you tell Pop you're going?" That's next. Wahoo slipped outside to clean Alice's pond. Alice the alligator was one of Mickey Cray's stars. She was 12 feet long and as tame as a guppy, but she looked truly ferocious. Over the years, Alice had appeared in front of a camera. Her credits include 9 feature films, 2 National Geographic documentaries, a 3-part Disney special about the Everglades, and a TV commercial for a fancy French skin lotion. She lay sunning on the mud bank while Wahoo skimmed the dead leaves and sticks from the water. Her eyes were closed, but Wahoo knew she was listening. "Hungry, girl?" he asked. The gator's mouth opened wide, and inside, as white as spun cotton. Some of her teeth were snagged and chipped. The tips were green from pond algae. "You forgot to floss," Wahoo said. Alice hissed. He went to get her some food. When she heard the squeaking of the wheelbarrow, she cracked her eyelids and turned her huge armored head. Wahoo tossed a whole plucked chicken into the alligator's gaping jaws. The sound of her crunching on the thawed bird obscured the voices coming from the house. Wahoo's mother and father discussing the China trip. Wahoo fed Alice 2 more dead chickens, locked the gate to the pond, and took a walk. When he returned, his father was upright on the sofa and his mother was in the kitchen fixing bologna sandwiches for lunch. "You believe this?" Mickey said to Wahoo. "She's bugging out on us." "Pop, we're broke." Mickey's shoulders slumped. "Not that broke." "You want the animals to starve?" Wahoo asked. They ate their sandwiches, barely speaking a word. When they were done, Mrs. Cray stood up and said, "I'm going to miss you guys. I wish I didn't have to go." Then she went into the bedroom and shut the door. Mickey seemed dazed. "I used to like iguanas." "We'll be okay." "My head hurts." "Take your medicine," said Wahoo. "I threw it away." "What?" "Those yellow pills, they made me constipated." Wahoo shook his head. "Unbelievable." "Seriously, I haven't had a satisfactory bowel movement since Easter." "Thanks for sharing," said Wahoo. He started loading the dishwasher, trying to keep his mind off the fact that his mom was about to fly away to the far side of the world. Mickey got up and apologized to his son. "I'm just being selfish. I don't want her to go." "Me neither." The following Sunday, they all rose before dawn. Wahoo lugged his mother's suitcase to the waiting taxi. She had tears in her eyes when she kissed him goodbye. "Take care of your dad," she whispered. Then to Mickey, she said, "I want you to get better. That's an order, mister." Watching the cab speed off, Wahoo's father looked forlorn. "It's like she's leaving us twice," he remarked. "What are you talking about, Pop?" "I'm seeing double, remember? There she goes. And there she goes again." Afterward, he went out to the backyard to deal with a troublesome howler monkey named Jocko, who picked the lock on his cage and was now leaping around pestering the parrots and macaws. Wahoo had to be careful because Jocko was mean. He used a tangerine to lure the surly primate back into his cage, but Jocko still managed to sink a dirty fang into one of Wahoo's hands. "I told you to wear the canvas gloves," scolded Mickey, when Wahoo was standing at the sink cleaning the wound. You don't wear gloves, Wahoo pointed out. Yeah, but I don't get chomped like you do. That was hogwash. Mickey got chomped all the time. It was an occupational hazard. His hands were so scarred that they looked fake, like rubber Halloween props. The phone rang and Wahoo picked it up. His father waved back to the couch and flipped through the TV stations until he found the Rainforest Channel. Who was it that called? He asked when Wahoo came out of the kitchen. Another job, Pop. You send him to Stiggy? Jimmy Stigmore was an animal wrangler who had a ranch up in West Davie. Mickey Cray wasn't crazy about Sticky. No, I didn't, Wahoo said. His father frowned. And who'd you send him to? Not Dander. Donnie Dander had lost his wildlife importing license after he got caught smuggling 38 rare tree frogs from South America. The frogs had been cleverly hidden in his underwear, but the adventure ended in embarrassment at the Miami airport when a customs officer noticed that Donnie's pants were cheaping. Wahoo said, I didn't send him to Dander either. I didn't send him anywhere. Okay, now you lost me, said Mickey Cray. I said we'd take the job. I said we could start next week. Are you crazy, boy? Look at me. I can't see straight. I can hardly walk. My skull's about to split open like a rotten pumpkin. Pop! What? I said we, Wahoo reminded him. You and I together. But what about school? Friday's the last day that I'm done for the summer. Already? Wahoo's dad didn't keep up with Wahoo's academic schedule as closely as his mother did. So who called about the job? Wahoo told him the name of the TV show. Not him! Mickey Cray snorted. I've heard stories about that jerk. Well, how does $1,000 sound? Wahoo asked. Pretty darn sweet. That's $1,000 a day. Wahoo let that sink in. If you want, I'll call him back and give him Stiggy's number. Don't be a knucklehead. Wahoo's father rose off the sofa and gave him a hug. You did good, son. We'll make this work. Absolutely, said Wahoo, trying to sound confident. Chapter 2. Hundreds of iguanas had died and tumbled from the treetops during the big freeze in southern Florida. As far as Wahoo knew, his dad was the only person who had been seriously hurt by one of the falling reptiles. Mickey Cray had been standing with a cup of hot cocoa beneath a coconut palm in the backyard when the dead lizard had knocked him stiff. Later, after he was brought home from the hospital, Mickey had ordered Wahoo to search the property, capture any iguanas that had survived the frigid weather, and relocate them to an abandoned orchard farm half a mile away. Wahoo hadn't searched very hard. It wasn't the fault of the iguanas they had frozen to death. They weren't meant to be living so far north. But Miami pet dealers had been importing baby specimens from the tropics for decades. The customers who had bought them had no idea they would grow 6 feet long, eat all the flowers in the garden, and then leap into the swimming pool to poop. When the rude reality set in, the unhappy owners would drive their pet lizards to the nearest park and set them free. Before long, South Florida was crawling with hordes of big wild iguanas that were producing hordes of little wild iguanas. The cold snap had put an end to it, at least temporarily. On the first morning of summer vacation, Wahoo found his father in the backyard scanning the trees. See any, Pop? All clear, Mickey Cray reported. Although months had passed since the accident, he was still paranoid about getting clobbered with another falling lizard. You must be feeling better, Wahoo remarked. He was pleased to see his dad up and moving around so early. My headache's gone, Mickey announced. Wahoo said, no way. All those pills the doctor made me swallow, they didn't do a darn thing. Then all of a sudden I wake up and boom, it's like a miracle, Mickey shrugged. Some things just can't be explained, son. But Wahoo had a theory that his father had been cured by 5 simple words. $1,000 a day. Mickey said, go fetch some lettuce for Gary and Gail. Gary and Gail were the 2 ancient Galapagos tortoises that Wahoo's dad had purchased from a zoo in Sarasota many years earlier when he was new to the wildlife business. These days, there weren't much demand for the TV nature shows for Gary and Gail because tortoises were not exactly dynamic performers. Mickey Cray had kept them around mainly for sentimental reasons. Each of the animals was more than a century old, and he didn't trust any of the other wranglers to treat them properly. The night before the big freeze, Mickey had gone out back and carefully cloaked Gail and Gary with 2 heavy quilts so they wouldn't die. Wahoo had watched from his bedroom window. I don't suppose he's interested in these 2, Mickey muttered while the tortoises munched loudly on their lettuce. No, he wants Alice, said Wahoo. and a major python. They were talking about their famous new client, Derek Badger. He was the star of Expedition Survival, one of the most popular shows on cable. Every week, Derek would parachute into some gnarly wilderness teeming with fierce animals, venomous snakes, and disease-carrying insects. Armed only with a Swiss Army knife and a straw, he would hike, climb, crawl, paddle, or swim back to civilization, or until he was rescued. Along the way, he'd eat bugs, rodents, worms, even the fungus on tree bark. The grosser it looked, the happier Derek Badger was to stuff it into his cheeks. Wahoo and his dad had watched Expedition Survival often enough to know that most of the wildlife scenes were faked. They were also aware that at no time was Derek's life in actual danger, since he was always accompanied by a camera crew packing food, candy, sunblock, water, first aid supplies, and most likely a large gun. Derek's never done a show in the Everglades, Wahoo said to his father. They say he's a humongous pain in the butt, this guy. Just be nice, Pop. It's a lot of money. Mickey promised to behave. So when do we get to meet the man himself? His assistant is supposed to stop by later. What kind of python do they want? Burmese? African rock? Wahoo said, honestly, I don't think it matters. They set to work building a pen for a young bobcat that was being delivered from a ranch up in Highland County. The cat had been struck by a jeep and suffered a broken leg that wouldn't mend, so it could never be released back into the wild. Mickey Cray had agreed to raise the animal, and he hoped to make it tame enough for TV work. Bobcats were strong, meaning the pen had to be sturdy. Wahoo knew that a person with double vision shouldn't be using a nail gun, so he put his dad in charge of measuring and cutting the chicken wire. By noon, Mickey's headache had come roaring back, and he was in misery. Wahoo steered him to the house and made him lie on the couch and fed him 4 aspirins. Minutes later, somebody started knocking on the front door. Mickey raised his head up and said, "That's probably the guy with the bobcat." Wahoo looked out the window and saw a woman with a shining stack of red hair. She wore tan shorts and jeweled sandals, and she was carrying a leather briefcase. "No cat," he said to his father. "Well, open the darn door." "But what if she's from the bank?" Wahoo whispered. The Crays were months behind on their mortgage payments. Mickey peeked out the window. "She is definitely not from the bank." Wahoo invited the woman inside. She introduced herself as Raven Stark. "I'm Derek's production assistant," she said. "I brought your contract." "Excellent," said Mickey. Wahoo noticed that Raven Stark had a strong accent. He tried not to stare at her hairdo, which looked like a sculpture made of red chrome. She asked, "May I take a look around?" "Nope," said Wahoo's father. Raven Stark seemed surprised. "First, you've got to sign a release form," Mickey said. "I don't want to get sued if you fall into the gator pond and get bit." She laughed. "I've been doing this a long time, Mr. Cray." "You sign the release and my son will be happy to give you the grand tour." A few years earlier, Mickey Cray had invited Wahoo's elementary school class to come see his wild animals. A boy named Tingley had ignored Wahoo's warnings and reached into one of the cages to tug the tail of a grumpy raccoon, which had spun around and clawed the kid's arm so badly that it looks like a road map of dead ends. Mickey paid for the doctor bills, though not before telling his parents that their boy was as dumb as a box of rocks. Ever since then, Mickey's insurance company insisted that everyone who came on the property had to fill out a legal form, saying it wasn't Mickey's fault if they got hurt. While Raven Stark signed the release, Mickey signed the contract from Expedition Survival. Wahoo noticed that he scrawled his name crookedly below the line where it was supposed to go, which meant his eyesight was still jumbled. "How long is the shoot going to take?" Mickey asked. Raven Stark said, "Until we get it right." Wahoo's dad looked pleased. "So it's $1,000 a day plus location fees and the animal rentals?" "Correct." She took an envelope from her purse and handed it to him. "Here's $800 as a deposit." Mickey counted the cash and then turned to Wahoo. "Son, go show this fine lady whatever she wants to see." Because it was going to be an Everglades show, Raven Stark was keenly interested in Alice the alligator. Wahoo led her to the pond and unlocked the gate. Raven whistled. "That's a monster, eh?" 12 feet, said Wahoo. "How much?" $150 a foot. "So that's $1,800 even," Raven said. "No problem." Wahoo couldn't wait to tell his father. "Do you have another one that's smaller?" said Raven. "Yes, ma'am. Something Derek could wrestle." "Wrestle?" Maybe a 4-footer, Raven said. 5 feet max. I'll have to check with Pop. Wahoo foresaw trouble. His father didn't like anybody messing with the animals. Where are your pythons? Raven asked. Wahoo led her to the heavy glass tanks where the constrictors were kept. South Florida had become infested with huge exotic snakes that, like the iguanas, had been imported for the pet trade. Hurricane Andrew had blown apart several large reptile farms and scattered baby pythons and boa constrictors all over the place. Derek wants a beast, Raven stated. Wahoo showed her a 14-footer that had been captured while devouring a possum and a dumpster behind a dead land mall. The man who'd found the snake was supposed to turn it over to state game officers, but instead he sold it to Mickey Cray for $300. Raven agreed it was an impressive specimen, but can it be handled safely? It's a she, Wahoo said, and she's a biter. Oh, Pop can work with her. She'll be okay. I hope so, said Ravenstark. How much? $700 for the day. Wahoo tried to sound steady and businesslike. He wasn't used to handling the negotiations. The standard rental rate for pythons was $50 a foot. Okay, fine. What did you say your name was? He told her. Is that Wahoo, like the fish? Everybody made that assumption. My dad named me after a wrestler, the boy explained. How interesting. Not really, said Wahoo. Can I ask what happened? She pointed at the white bump on Wahoo's right hand where a thumb should have been. Yes, ma'am. Alice got it. You're serious, aren't you? Quickly, Wahoo said, it wasn't her fault. It was mine. One day he had been showing off for a girl who had come over after school to see the animals. Wahoo had brought her down to the gator pond for a feeding, but he stepped away too close to Alice, who had jumped up and snapped the thawed chicken out of his grasp, taking his thumb along with it. The girl's name was Paulette, and she'd fainted on the spot. Changing the subject, Wahoo asked, Where's Mr. Badger? Paris, Raven said. Wahoo had never heard of any dangerous jungles or swamps in Paris, so he assumed the famous survivalist was taking a vacation. Mickey Cray came outside and joined them at the snake tanks. Wahoo told him that Miss Stark was interested in using Beulah the big Burmese. Good choice, said Mickey. He appeared to be feeling better. You've seen the program, of course, Raven said. Sure, said Wahoo. It's on Thursday nights. And rerun every Sunday morning, she said. So you already know what we're all about, verisimilitude. Wahoo didn't even pretend to understand what that word meant. His father just looked at him and shrugged. Making it real, Raven explained. On Expedition Survival, we're all about making it real. Derek considers that his sacred mission a bond of trust with our viewers. Wahoo glanced at the massive snakes coiled in their tanks. They were real enough, they just weren't wild and free. The production assistant turned to Wahoo's father. Any questions? Mickey smiled. We put our animals on TV all the time. That's what we do. Ravenstark bent down and tapped a scarlet fingernail on the glass panel that separated her from Beulah the python. Well, Mr. Cray, she said, I promise you've never done a show like Derek's. All right, we're going to stop there. That's the end of chapter 2, and we're about to start chapter 3. So if you were interested in continuing the story, that is where you would pick up. And I actually do really like watching nature shows, and I'm always interested to know how much of it is real and how much of it is made up. So this is kind of an interesting take on that with all the reality TV that's out there. Is it really reality, or is it someone just renting an animal from a farm like this to make it seem like it's dangerous? And also by the description that we read, it seems like a lot of things are going to go wrong. But as I said, this author is very, very funny. So I know he will make it absolutely hilarious, whatever happens. All right, so we are going to pause there, and I'm going to get our Plinko board so that we can see what we're reading next time. I am going to use my cheat sheet that I have here really quick and let you know that this book, we do have it as an ebook on our Libby app by Overdrive. So you can get it on a device, on a computer, on a phone, so that you can keep reading it that way. There is also an e-audiobooks. You can stream it from your device or your computer to listen to it. We also have it as an audiobook, so you can actually check out CDs and listen to it that way. And then we also have it as a playaway, which is an MP3 player that's portable that you can take with you. You just need to add some batteries and some headphones or some earbuds. Okay, so again, sorry, we're gonna pause there, get our Plinko board, and see what we're gonna be reading next time. All right, I'm back with our Plinko board, and we're going to drop it to see where it is going to land. Again, if we drop on something that is what we've had recently, I will redo it because that's the whole point of this, is to get a variety of genres. And also you can see the reflection of my light from where I'm recording, so I'm sorry about that. And because this Plinko board is being a little difficult, I do have to tilt it back just a little bit because otherwise the chips like to fly off the front of it, and it is so annoying when that happens. And so trying to make it not do that. All right, so here we go. All right, now I'm so sorry. I'm actually going to cheat just a little bit. So technically it landed in historical fiction, but I'm going to put it over here in fantasy. We haven't had a fantasy story in a long time, and we've actually had most of our genres recently. We've just happened to land on some really, really good ones, but that is one we haven't had in a while. And I've got some really good fantasy books that I wanted to share with you. So I know I'm cheating, and I'm so sorry, but sometimes it just has to be done. But I did want to see where it was going to land just in case. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a great time listening to our story. Again, you can always visit any of our locations to either check out a print copy of this, put it on hold so that you can pick it up from wherever you would like to. You can go on our website and reserve a copy that way. You can also go on our website and see all the amazing things that are happening at all of our locations, whether that is a program that's taking place or some kind of kit like a STEAM kit or a take and make that's happening that you can take home for some fun on your own. And we are starting to get back into programming, so you do want to keep an eye out on the things that we're offering. Thank you again so much for joining me. I'm Miss Jessica from EVPL Oakland, and I will see you again next time, where I know I cheated, but we're going to be reading a fantasy story. All right, see you again soon. Bye.